Before we get started with today's podcast on Gonzaga basketball, head on over to the 19.9 website and get yourself outfitted in retro Zags gear. If you are new to the podcast, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you really enjoy it, send a link of the show to a friend who would enjoy hearing weekly discussions about basketball and basketball culture. Now, on to the show.
A 19-foot, 9-inch game. Inside that three-point line, it's all there. Nice move by Steve Fisher here.
Welcome to the 19.9 podcast. I'm the Chucker, 19.9's resident historian, and we're thrilled to welcome to the show today former Gonzaga basketball star Casey Calvary, owner of one of the most badass names in college hoops history, and a man who helped launch Gonzaga's run into college basketball's elite. Around the turn of the century, Casey teamed with the likes of Richie Frahm, Matt Santangelo, and Dan Dickau in leading the Zags to 3 consecutive NCAA tournament appearances. That streak continues today as Gonzaga has made 21 straight trips to the big dance, a mark only bested by Kansas, Duke, and fellow 19.9 school Michigan State. 19.9 is excited to have Casey here to reflect on that run and Gonzaga's ascent as a premier college basketball program. Casey, thanks for joining us here today on the 19.9 podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me along. Happy to be here and talk good memories and Zags hoops as well.
Awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate it. And I'm honest about saying you have one of the most badass names in college hoops history. You're right up there with Dwayne.
Thank you, man. What makes you say that out of curiosity?
It just sounds like a badass, like burly power forward, doesn't it?
Very cool. I appreciate that. It's always worked well for me.
Cool, man. So we got a lot of ground to cover here. So let's start with how you ended up at Gonzaga in the first place. So you're a kid from Tacoma, Washington. Kind of where else did you consider and what ultimately led you to picking Gonzaga?
You know, the Northwest, in terms of its basketball progression, when I was, coming out of high school, was not a very well thought up place in terms of our talent level. We thought we had a lot of good players and we were playing good basketball up here, but it was really a challenge to get recruited to any of the national schools, any of the East Coast schools, or even a lot of the Pac-10 schools, from Washington State. We hadn't had, a long pedigree of NBA players coming out, and we hadn't had any guys to kind of break through and pave the way. So my recruiting process, I was kind of one of those guys that I got recruited by every sort of almost there Division I school, and then just a couple of like larger schools. So the recruiting process for me kind of started off with a number of West Coast Conference schools and Colorado State as well. Those were the ones that first gave me a look. And the Pac-10 and UW and WSU in particular, I went to camps at those schools. I knew their coaches. They would come down and watch me play, and they were really nice to me. But I don't think they ever really had like a genuine interest in recruiting me, which hurt my feelings at first, and then generated a great anger later in life. That was the beginning of the process, and then I narrowed it down. We had a lot of schools came and visited. Pepperdine, Lorenzo Romar came. My parents really liked him. I thought about going down to some of those like warmer like weather places, and they were recruiting that pretty hard. But then I was like, I'm a basketball player. What do I care about the weather? I want to go to a place where I can win games, and also playing like really early on was important to me. There was some other schools that said, hey, walk on for a year and then we'll see how that goes. So, Gonzaga and Colorado State were places where I felt like I could probably get playing time pretty early on and have a good opportunity to win some games. So I decided to take those two as like my recruiting trips. After visiting both places, it really came down to the players. The guys that we had at Gonzaga. I mean, you mentioned some of them: Matt Santangelo, Richie Frahm, Ryan Floyd, Mike Nielsen, Mark Spink. I was Axel Dench, Jeremy Eaton. We had Bakari Hendricks was already there. There was just a load of guys that were really good. And I was a little confused just because I had some other buddies that were going to other schools, and the talent level that we had at Gonzaga, it's always like you always think you're a little better than you are, and you never know till you really get out there. But even before I got there my freshman year, I felt like we had a lot of potential there and a lot of talent that maybe hadn't been at a school like GU before.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what I want to get into a little bit here is let's take a moment to understand where Gonzaga is when you get there in 1997, because this is not a basketball powerhouse. I mean, it's known, of course, for producing John Stockton, but Gonzaga had exactly one NCAA tournament appearance in its program history at that time, despite the fact that it had played basketball since 1907. So this, again, not a basketball powerhouse. Gonzaga is coming off a 15-12 season when you arrive on campus. There's a new coach there in Dan Monson. So how would you kind of just describe, you mentioned there was some talent there, but how would you describe the state of the program at that time? And I think even more, what did you kind of think were kind of realistic expectations as you began your career there?
There was a real dichotomy in the state of the program, and it was between like the talent level that we had and like the facilities and like the actual way we ran the program, the type of budget that we had, the way we traveled, our uniforms, everything was kind of out of balance. And I don't think we really knew it yet. So, I mean, we had to have a loaded roster basically to start off with. We had to have gotten a couple of kids that we never should have got. And they're guys that don't get talked about, a ton. And that's like Ryan Floyd and Mark Spink and Mike Nielsen. Those are three guys that played like pivotal roles like for us throughout like 2 of my 3 years that we made those runs. And they probably should have been at larger schools. I mean, obviously you can take Richie Frahm at Santangelo, Dan, the guys that either did make the NBA or almost made the NBA. And those guys, you can clearly say, yeah, they should have been somewhere else. But we had 4 or 5 more guys that should have been like more highly recruited. And I think it has something to do with, the Northwest thing, where they got overlooked, but we had talent when we got there. But the state of the program itself, it was like we would travel and stay in motels, not hotels. The motels.
Motels.
we would get done with practice, and we didn't have training table or anybody that cooked for us. The COG, which was the old cafeteria, which has essentially been bulldozed, and there's now a 3-story nice student center there, would close before practice was over. And so we would get done with practice and not shower and try and run to the COG in time to get food. And if we got there in time, we could eat. And if not, we had to use, our Bulldog bucks to get pizza, because that was basically the only food left at that point in time. So the state of the program in terms of our funding and our facilities was not great. We were loaded with talent. We had some great coaches who were excited. They were changing some of the things. We still had the toughness from Coach Fitzgerald and all like the hard nosed and blue collar work ethic sort of that we had been taught by that other generation. But now we had a new coaching staff that wanted to be, a high powered offense, and we had talent that hadn't been put in one place before. So it's kind of like, all right, well, what are we going to do with this now?
Yeah. And so, in your freshman season, 97, 98, you guys win the West Coast Conference regular season title, but then you lose to San Francisco in the conference title game. So, you mentioned you kind of see things kind of turn a little bit. What do you recall about that experience losing to San Francisco? Because I have to imagine that was incredibly disappointing.
Yeah, I was first of all, the situation that we were in, the West Coast Conference used to be a California conference. There's a lot of schools that are down in there. And so no matter what happened, they would always have the tournament down in California. So for me, like that was irritating to win the league. And then we're playing, University of San Francisco at Santa Clara's gym, like right down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's wrong. It shouldn't have been that way. That made me mad. I've always hated the West Coast Conference, and I still do. The way they behave towards basketball, and they take basketball money and won't reinvest it in their facilities and equipment. I mean, the West Coast Conference, in my opinion, does not do a great job with the funds that they are given from Gonzaga basketball. But that's my opinion in terms of what they do. In terms of like losing that game, and what did it do for us, and what did it do, for me personally, I was really mad personally at the coaching staff, just being a freshman. There was other lineups that we should have been playing with younger guys we would have won that game if they would have played better lineups. So I'm happy to put that on their plate. The next year, though, in the off season, our whole mantra was like, we cannot leave this in the hands of the NCAA committee. And that really put a bad taste in my mouth for the NCAA, and I won't speak to my opinions on them. But they took a team like us. We had won the Top of the World Classic. We beat Clemson when they were number 3. We beat Mississippi State. We beat Tulsa. We played at Michigan State. We played a million tough places and had an awesome schedule and had to be road warriors and did not get rewarded at all. We got sent on the road to Wyoming in the NIT where they expected us to lose, and they sent us to Hawaii where we ended up losing. So the whole offseason mantra was, we don't leave this in the hands of the NCAA tournament committee ever, because they're a bunch of idiots.
Gotcha. And it's an interesting mantra, especially as you go into that 98-99 campaign, which certainly can be argued the most pivotal season in Gonzaga basketball history. So that's a real turning point for Gonzaga hoops. And so in that 98-99 campaign, your sophomore season, you guys once again win the West Coast Conference regular season title, but this time you run through the conference tournament and you punch your ticket to March Madness. You're a number 10 seed and you open up against Minnesota. It's only the second tournament appearance in school history. What was the pulse of the team heading into that 1999 NCAA tournament?
Well, we felt great. We had the year before, where we were on Santa Clara's floor and we lost to USF, and the next year we're playing Santa Clara, and it's like a repeat of the same thing, except for Santangelo came through, had a huge game for us. All of our guys just could not have been any more motivated, than they were, to win the game, and I remember after that game, we had a bunch of fans that drove down from Spokane. I mean, a lot. And I remember rushing the court, and I remember my dad found me on the middle of the court in Santa Clara's gym, and we were just hugging each other and dancing around the middle of the floor. Because if you're a program like Gonzaga that's only ever had one NCAA tournament appearance, once you make it to the tournament and you punched your ticket, essentially your year is supposed to be over. The rest of it's this glorified vacation where you go and you practice and you stay at these amazing hotels and you do more media than you've ever done, and then you go get your butt kicked by a big school, right? That's the mid-major story. And for us, we sort of celebrated that moment. Hey, we've done it. We've accomplished this first thing. And we did that for, all of half a night. And then the next day it was just, all right, back to work. We were never a team that was particularly intimidated by opponents. So it was all right, we have Minnesota coming up. How do we prep for these guys? How do we prepare? We played Munson and Fewey and these guys, but they enrolled us in a lot of 3-day tournaments where you play a couple of games over a weekend. And then they wanted us to take the mindset of, we're taking each one of these rounds, each 2 rounds in the NCAA as a little mini tournament, and we have to go in these mini tournaments. So that's the mentality we took in there.
And so you guys get by Minnesota in the first round. Then you upset second seeded Stanford. Now you're the belle of the ball, right? Like you're Cinderella. The national attention is pouring in. You got Florida on the horizon. What do you personally, what do you remember feeling? Was it confidence? Was it nerves? Were you playing with house money? Because again, I think you're exactly right. For a lot of mid-majors, you go there, you have your experience, you get knocked on the first round, and that's it, right? But you're a sophomore, you're a kid from Tacoma, you're on the national stage. What emotions did you feel, and how did you look at that Florida team that had parade All-Americans and had NBA talent and Mike Miller, Udonis Haslem? Kind of how did you personally look at that?
Well, going into the game, for me, I had a bit of blinders on because I didn't know who any of those guys were, and I couldn't have cared less. I seriously didn't know their names until we started scouting them, and then I take them very seriously because it's my job to learn how to shut them down. But I really couldn't have cared less I who they were, and I really didn't honestly know. For me personally, competition is a very unique thing. I even have to limit how I compete in my daily life, even to this day. So when I get out there on the court and my teammates as well, I know the chip on my shoulder is so big that it leans me to the side. And I just enjoy the moment and competing and trying to beat the guy in the other jersey every single play until the game's over, and it's glory and it's adrenaline and it's emotion, and there's just no fear involved in any of that. And there's never been a time where I've looked at somebody, I've lost a lot of games, but I've never thought I was going to lose a game going into one, so that was never a thought in my mind, or I think in any of the other guys. We were just so fired up. We had faith in each other. We had played together enough. We had played in enough hard places lose. We had been road warriors. So playing these big schools actually on a neutral court, we felt like we had the advantage because they had to come. We had to go play them in their gym everywhere. No one would come to Gonzaga and play us because you never win. Why would you come there to lose? No one wanted to.
Yeah. And so you hit on a few things that I think we're going to get to. You mentioned kind of just competing, right? And so we got the closing seconds of that Florida game. Gonzaga's down 1. Your teammate Quinton Hall puts up a runner and you crash the glass. And I literally mean crash because when you see the video, and anyone could check it out on YouTube, Gonzaga versus Florida, Sweet 16 game, 1999, you literally crash because you come in from the top of the key. You go over Brent Wright. It is not the most graceful putback, but it's a putback with 4 seconds left. It, kind of bangs on the back of the iron, then drops in. Florida rushes down the court, misses it, shot at the buzzer. Take us back to those closing seconds and the euphoria of that moment and bring us back to March 18th, 1999 in Phoenix. And what stands out about that scene?
Well, we got the ball in, and I think Quentin gave up his dribble and passed it to me. And I knew for sure I wasn't supposed to have the ball, so I threw it right back to Q. And as soon as he had the ball and he was dribbling it, we all knew well enough that Quentin really wanted to take that shot, and he should take that shot. He was just one of those spark plugs, one of those guys. I had faith that he would make it, but also, we had talked about it in the timeout. And Dan Munson, was like, look, we need to get this rebound if we miss the shot. And if we don't miss the shot, let's just, let's get a foul trying to get the rebound so we don't waste any more time. This should all happen like really fast. So as soon as Quentin started driving to the hoop, he wasn't passing that ball. That ball was going to get shot. That's why I started crashing right away because the ball was going up. It was time to go try and get a putback. And you're right. That thing was not graceful. I sort of swatted at it. Every Florida fan in the world will tell you that I'm over the back, but you have to block out, man. Turn around and block me out. Keep me off the glass.
He doesn't. Brent Wright doesn't block out. Again, watch the video. He sees that shot goes up and he kind of takes a step or two towards the basket and doesn't come and find you and, put his butt in you. And it's fundamental basketball, man. You crash it and you put it back.
Yeah, there was a lot of luck involved with that thing bouncing in, certainly, but I will take it, and then they got the ball in bounce. And I remember frantically running down court and trying to yell, don't foul, don't foul. And then Jeremy's running past Eddie Shannon as he shoots that 3 in the corner. That was a really good look. That thing went off back iron. That almost went in. He's a great shooter. Yeah. So, I got a luck, some luck on that tip in, and then we got lucky that, he didn't hit that last shot for sure.
In fairness, Florida got their luck the following year in the NCAA tournament, the first round against Butler, which was kind of their monumental, I think, kind of real turning point in their program. And I've talked with Lewis Curry and our Tales from the Bench series. That next year is when Mike Miller hits a buzzer shot, kind of falling down. Florida ends up surviving Butler and then advancing to the championship game. And so Florida. And Lewis Curry talks about that shot saying, I can't believe Mike Miller hit that shot. Shot, as he's falling to the ground, he just kind of tosses it up. So
small world when that was happening. Not the next year, but the year after that, Udonis Haslam and I were playing in France together on the same team. And his aunt Jackie came over, and she stayed with him pretty much the whole year. And I would go over there, and she would make us meals. And to hear her curse out the Gonzaga boys, it was pretty funny to hear Udonis Haslam's aunt they were so mad still about that game years later.
They got 2 titles. They're okay. So, you guys win that game. You're 1 game from the Final Four. You're against a UConn team that spent much of that season at number 1. You guys are up 32-31 at halftime against UConn. That UConn team, again, the eventual national champ, they pull out a 5-point victory. What was the difference in that game, and how would you characterize that UConn team?
That UConn team, they were really well-rounded. They had Freeman and Voshkol, and they had Rip Hamilton. They had Khalid El-Amin. If you looked at every position that they had a legitimate professional player. And that was one of the first, Duke obviously did that a lot of years, and Kansas and some other schools. But, to come up against a group of professional guys like that was a pretty unique challenge for us. As you said, we were up during halftime, and even up until pretty late in that game. We thought we were going to win. I was super shocked, when we didn't find a way to win that game, just because we were up at halftime. We were in control. I felt comfortable with the flow of the game. And then, we just sort of tightened up for that last 5 minutes. And I think that probably was, just a bit of nerves on our part, but also we have to give credit to them. They came out and they played really well. They hit shots when they needed to. They executed, and they defeated us. That was a tough one for me. I'm not happy about that.
Was there a sense in that game, you mentioned you kind of tighten up a little bit. UConn has been in these, really high profile games. Was there a sense of, do you feel that there was maybe a sense on your team, especially in those closing seconds, like, oh crap, we're not supposed to be here. How do we react to this? Whereas maybe they had a little bit more experience in dealing with that.
It's possible. We definitely didn't have like any times like in timeouts where we were like frozen and not knowing what play to run or anything like that. We didn't have any big failures of execution or, anything that I can specifically point back to. But, I think part of that may have been their more of the experience that they have, but they certainly executed better. In those, those games come down to just a couple of high pressure plays, right? And it's almost like there's no air in the building, and everyone's just waiting to see. And there's some guys that want the ball and some guys that are afraid of it. And that's really some of the most fun times in all of hoops. And we've come out on top a lot of times, but they found a way to beat us that time.
It's great when you're a competitor to be in those moments, though, too.
It is.
And so that 1999 tournament run, that is really the turning point for the Gonzaga program, where you guys go from some sleepy school in, Spokane, Washington, to the national stage. And that really kind of sends Gonzaga on a trajectory. So you have this pivotal moment that really launches Gonzaga hoops and really the university too, So what's one moment in that tournament run that really stands out to you, something you'll just never forget?
Man, they sent us shoes. So like all year long, we've been begging for shoes. And I don't mean to, talk about our sponsors in a negative way at all, but like you got like one pair of shoes at Gonzaga and you basically had to like go show the trainer that you had a giant hole in them to get another one. And then we went to the NCAA tournament and they sent us a pair of shoes and we won a game and they sent us another one. And then we beat Florida and they sent us like the brand new Huaraches that like only Duke had. And it was just magical to me. It was like, wow, you win a couple of games and all of a sudden like you get gear and you can fly places and people want to interview you. It was amazing and electrifying to us to find out, what happens when you win basketball games. And I can't speak for any of the other guys, but for me, there was no going back. It's like, hey, now that we've found out that there is this kind of stage, we can't play on any other kind of stage. This is too exciting, too rewarding. This is too much fun. We have to keep doing this. It's like you don't want the party to stop.
And, and we're going to talk a bit more about this, but you see a lot of teams, or programs that they make their magical run in the tournament, but then it's hard to sustain that success. We don't hear from them again. So, soon after that loss to UConn, again, you guys on the right on the doorstep of the Final Four, but you lose to UConn. They go on to win the national title. Coach Monson leaves, quite ironically, for Minnesota, who you guys had just beaten in the first round.
Yep.
Coach Few is elevated a seat over from assistant coach to head coach. And again, we see these one-hit wonders in the tournament all the time. There's this great 1 or maybe 2 year run, but the program can't recapture that momentum. Coaches or players leave, complacency happens, right?
Yep.
You mentioned for you, there was like, hey, there's no going back now. But as you head into that following season, how did the program react to what it had just accomplished, and how did it chart kind of its next steps forward?
We had such a solid staff in place. The way Munson and Fewey and Billy Greer, they were so close in age and so close as friends, and they all lived together and they had all come from the University of Oregon that, Dan was the head coach, but it was so easy for Mark to become the head coach. And I don't want to take anything away from the coaching that was done during his first 2 years there at Gonzaga, but I will say we were a very easy group to coach. You didn't have to, teach us the plays a whole bunch of times. We like to call our own sets. We could switch defenses on makes and misses. And we could throw a lot of things at opponents without the coaches having to do a ton of work, and I'm sure they'll love hearing that, but that's the reality for those first couple of years.
Well, in case Coach Monson is listening to the 19-9 podcast, your junior year, Pepperdine actually wins the West Coast Conference regular season title, but it's you guys who capture the West Coast Conference tournament title and then get another bid into the big dance. And you're number 10 seed again. And again, there's this thought of, oh, hey, these guys, they made a good run last year. You're not going to catch anyone by surprise this year. Yet you guys take down Louisville and St. John's before bowing out to Purdue. So how do you compare that run your junior year to that real magical run your sophomore year? What was kind of unique or maybe different about that experience? Because it was kind of your second go around in March Madness.
Yeah, it felt fantastic, first of all, because I knew what was coming. It was like the NCAA tournament, the media attention that we'll get.
New shoes.
Yeah, new shoes. Yeah. The sophomore year had been a little better. I mean, like we actually got uniforms that hadn't been played in by like 8 other dudes for 7 years before after the 99 run. So the next year was a little better for us, but yeah, more shoes are coming. You get to play on the highest stage that there is in basketball and compete. And for me, that's what it was always about. So the second run, we have some huge programs. I mean, you just named them. I mean, Louisville and St. John's at the time was just a powerhouse. I mean, with Eric Barkley and they had all kinds of really good teams and talented teams. So it was just, by the time you get to the NCAA tournament, you may get, if you're a high seed, a not great team in the first round, but those are quality teams no matter who you're playing. So I was just loaded up, fired up to play whoever it was.
Did you get the sense that you guys weren't going to catch anyone by surprise in that junior season?
Yeah, once when you have the same number of guys back that we did off the previous team, and we had the runs that we had, and we'd had a good year that year as well. I don't think anyone was going to look past us or think about their next opponent. I think by that second year, we already had some measure of respect. I mean, clearly not what there is now, but when you're first there, you're a 10 seed, you're your conference champion, you're just there to get mowed over.
Yeah. So let's kind of then jump forward then to your senior year in 2000, 2001. You guys are coming off these, 2 consecutive deep tournament runs. You got much of the team coming back, yet you don't have a preseason top 25 ranking. There's no national love. And then you guys actually stumble in the first half of the season, and you're 6-5 after 11 games. You have losses to New Mexico, Wisconsin, Green Bay, shout out BJ LaRue, Boise State. Then you guys go 15-1 though to close out the regular season. You're the conference player of the year. What was the turning point in that season? Because again, you guys kind of struggled a little bit at the start. What kind of changed things for you guys there?
Well, we did. We lost 4 of our. We lost everybody but me out of the starting lineup that year, and we lost our 6th man and basically the 7th man. So we lost pretty much the majority of our whole team that year. I mean, Santangelo, Frahm, Dench, Nielsen, Floyd, all graduated. They're like, that's maybe the best class we've ever had in Gonzaga is those guys. I mean, those fantastic class. So they graduate and they go off. Dickau transfers, which was fantastic for us. We signed Blake Stepp. He was a true freshman. That was a huge, huge deal for us because early in the year, Dan broke his finger. And he missed all those games, and we lost a lot of those games at Wisconsin and all that. We had a freshman point guard, and nothing against Blake because he was fantastic, and he stepped up big time the minutes that he came in and filled. But we weren't as talented as we had been in past years. We had new faces, guys who weren't quite as experienced. Our coaching staff had been there. I had been there. Mark Spink stepped up big time that year. Corey Violet, Zach Gord. We had some new faces, some JUCO transfers, some guys who hadn't been around. And so it took us a little longer, plus the injury. I mean, having an NBA player like Danny out obviously hurts you, So when he came back and Blake got things a little more figured out, that's when we went on that big run at the end of the season. And right into the NCAA tournament after that. But I think the injury and all the new faces were why we struggled at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, gotcha. So you get that 12 seed going into the 2001 NCAA tournament. There are always these 12-5 upsets every year, never fails. You're certainly not going to catch anyone by surprise now.
Yeah.
So you beat Virginia, fellow 19-9 school. You beat Indiana State, another 19-9 school, and you're back in the Sweet 16. Your senior year, was there a sense of I think nationally, hey, you guys just don't get us. Like you mentioned earlier, there's no turning back for us. We're a team to be reckoned with. So how did you see things through your eyes?
Man, that run almost didn't happen. That Virginia game, that's my other tip in. We were down 1 with, I think, 5 seconds left, and Danny got blocked by Roger Mason Jr. Off the glass, and I got the rebound and put that one back in. That put us up 1. And then I think there was 3 seconds left, and Virginia got the ball in and missed a shot at the buzzer. But that run almost didn't happen on my senior year. So my thought was all right, we're back here in the tournament. We know what we're doing. This is just, another one of these mediocre schools from a big conference. That's honestly how I thought of them. And so going into the game, I felt confident, but then Virginia was really tough. They had a couple real good players that played us tough. They played good basketball. They rebounded well. They were really physical, especially on our guards. Our guards struggled with that physicality, and I didn't have a great game in that Virginia game. So we found a way, there at the end. So struggling through that. And then the next game was our first ever time that we were the lower seed in the NCAA tournament, playing Indiana State. That was a weird thing for us. We switched jersey colors. We were, supposed to be the favorite for once, and people were cheering for the underdog Indiana State team, and we're what the heck,
They're only a 13 seed, by the way. You were 12, they're 13.
Exactly. So that was a little different for us.
And so, you do get by Indiana State. Now you're in the Sweet 16, third consecutive year. Yeah. You face Michigan State there in the Sweet 16. And your career, ends to the Spartans there. But Gonzaga was never the same after that 3-year run. And so the program has made 18 straight tournament appearances since, and that's still ongoing streak is now at 21. They've been to a national title game. Gonzaga has one and dones and 5-stars recruits now. I know you're, in Spokane now. It's a different vibe, right? So this is not the sleepy little Catholic school in Spokane anymore. So truth serum, Casey, did you ever see this coming 20 years ago? What seemed like a realistic ceiling for Gonzaga, when you went there in 1997?
I don't know. That's a great question. I definitely did not have the foresight or the imagination to imagine that Gonzaga would be a perennial top 10 team. I thought that we could definitely be, a perennial top 25 team. I thought that, we could be the best in the West Coast Conference, and I thought we could maintain that indefinitely. But the way that they've pushed it to the next level, they've gone international with recruiting, and they compete for blue chip guys here in the States. It would have taken a lot of imagination for me to say that I could see Gonzaga becoming what it has become. And I think it's really a tribute to the coaching staff and to the university, for putting the facilities and, the mechanisms in place for the coaching staff to continue to recruit and to build the successful, behemoth that they've built there. It's awesome. It's amazing. In Spokane, we love it. If you walk down the street, there's Zags stuff. There's Zags stuff everywhere, but it's come such a long ways. I remember after I played my senior year, before I got to campus, my first weekend at Gonzaga, I wanted to buy a Gonzaga shirt and a hat, and the bookstore was closed because it's a Sunday, Catholic school. So I went to the mall and tried to buy a Gonzaga shirt and a hat. And then I went to Sports Authority, tried to buy a shirt and a hat. I couldn't find one in the whole town. Could not buy a Gonzaga shirt or hat. So that was a little depressing. I remember when I left my senior year, I was going to play for Isuzu Motors over in Tokyo in Japan. And there was a sports store in Tokyo that had 2 Gonzaga hats and a shirt. And I was like, wow, we've made it. I couldn't buy one in Spokane when I started. Now there's stuff in Tokyo when I'm done. So that was pretty cool for me.
Yeah, that is really cool. What ingredients do you think have created that culture and that sustainable success?
I think it's the culture. What are the ingredients? It's the people, really. Mark has been around that program for so long. He's left his stain on it. Tommy Lloyd has been there so long. Brian Michelson. They've continued to bring in coaching talent and recruit the right type of kids that I think the community and the nation can really buy into. So, when you watch like Corey Kispert play basketball, he's a hard guy not to cheer for. He plays really hard. He plays well. He plays the right way. You look at just all the guys throughout the years, we've had a number of players that are really easy to cheer for and really easy to love. And I think that really helps grow the Gonzaga brand. When we have pros and we have other guys that go out and they talk about their experience at Gonzaga, it's not just a place where you come to get better at basketball. You do that, but you also form bonds and friendships with people and with players and coaches, and even in the Spokane community that you're likely to have for the rest of your life. I mean, you'd be shocked how many of these guys are still around here. I mean, Matt Santangelo and I are doing a business deal right now together. Blake Stepp and I are doing another one. Brian Michelson and I, our kids are together in the same pod. It's an amazingly small community here. I mean, Ryan Floyd and Mike Nelson live across the street from each other. I can see Corey Violet's house if I get my binoculars out, and that's kind of creepy. But I mean, everybody's around here, so it's.
Although there's some fun neighborhood basketball games then. As I said earlier, we've seen in the tournament, we've seen these one-hit wonders or maybe mini runs before, but Gonzaga has just continued climbing. And as we sit here today, 2 decades later, global health pandemic, but Gonzaga's preseason number one. It's ahead of Duke. It's ahead of Kentucky, Kansas, and any other blue bloods you want to name.
It's crazy.
But yet there's a generation of fans who only know Gonzaga as a perennial top 25, really top 10 team. So what role do you think your era played in this? What important foundational bricks do you think you and your teammates from, around the turn of the century, what do you think you guys laid back then that has really allowed this to grow?
I think the key was in the transition. The key was getting that next level of recruits and getting Mark Few to stay. Not to say that, the next generation of coaches wouldn't have, done just as good of a job, but it's harder to recruit when you have a constant coaching turnover. So, I think that was really a big part of it. If you have that same face and that same brand and that same consistency, and then you reload. So like Blake Stepp probably should have gone to a Pac-10 school. He had offers. Same thing for Corey Violet. Rony Tyrioff was an unknown guy, basically, that we got out of France. They weren't sure, how good he was going to be. So we had like a couple of guys, again, that maybe we shouldn't have got that we ended up getting. And that is what really, that transition is what made it sustainable, I think. Cause I'm not going to say it's easy to put a run together of even like 1 or 2 or a couple of good years, but typically that talent tends to go away. Those coaches that made that happen tend to get poached, and the school tend to take that money and not reinvest it in the program. And Gonzaga did all of those things. I mean, we reloaded, we kept our coach there like we needed to. We invested heavily into our facilities, into our basketball program, and all of those things paid off big time. But if we hadn't assigned Blake and Corey and Zach and a couple of these like key transitional recruits who then carried us over that next period, then it all would have fallen apart. So those guys had to say yes.
Gotcha. Especially as we kind of sit here now, again, 2 decades after kind of, this run really started. What moment do you see as the critical turning point in Gonzaga basketball history? A lot of fans, mind you, would point to that tip-in against Florida. So throw modesty aside if you need to. But what moment do you see as the critical turning point in Gonzaga basketball history? What do you say, like, hey, that's what launched us? Because, the Butler guys, they had a little similar trajectory of you guys, Gonzaga, that is. They point to that loss at Florida in the 2000 tournament when I mentioned earlier, Mueller hits the shot falling down. And they say that loss, that powered all the wins that came after that. So What moment do you kind of see as that critical turning point in Gonzaga basketball history?
I feel more like it was the when we beat Stanford by 13 and they were a 2 seed in the second round of that tournament. I mean, in the first round, we played Minnesota, but they were missing 2 of their players who had other people doing their homework for them, which sounds awesome to me. We didn't offer that at Gonzaga. And then the
Jesuits just don't let you get away with easy stuff, huh?
No, they want you to do your own work. They make it hard. But the next, that next game, we're playing a number 2 seed, and they had Mark Madsen and Tim Young and Arthur Lee, and they were just stacked and loaded. And we went out there and we just beat them down, and it wasn't really that hard. And so that I think when you have that kind of performance on a high stage against a team that many people, were picking to, possibly win the national title, then that just sort of lets them know, like, all right, like, who's next? These guys are great. All these teams are great, but there's no, like, if we play our game, we can beat anybody. And when you have that kind of feeling, you really can beat anybody.
Awesome, man. So, Casey, I want to thank you for your time here, but I just want to get some rapid fire, some quick little things here, man, before we wrap up. It's been a great chat about kind of getting your perspective on Gonzaga hoops and kind of how it's grown and developed and kind of where it is today, and really kind of reflecting on the great run that started with you and your crew back there in 1990, 1998, 99. So let's take the Kennel, your home court there at Gonzaga, off the table. What's the coolest gym you ever played in?
Kansas.
Oh, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, Fog Allen, definitely. What is the team you least enjoyed playing?
San Diego, before they built the new facility, they had a gym that seriously fit like 250 people. There was a stage on one side of it and like high school bleachers on the other side. And then you have to get like fired up to play in front of like your parents who flew down there. I mean, San Diego was the worst. Their new facility is great, but that was the worst place I've ever played. Oh, Texas Pan American, just as bad.
I'm sorry?
Texas Pan American. Sorry, I'm going to put that one as a tie with San Diego.
What was so bad about Texas Pan American?
The fact that we almost lost there. There was like no, like we get down to the border of Texas. I mean, you're like right on the border, and we were ranked at the time in the top 25. They had the top scorer in the nation, but they were not a good team, and there was like no one there, and we were losing the game, and more people started showing up, and all of a sudden this tiny little gym is packed, and we're losing, and we're down 2 with 3 or 4, I think 3.5 seconds left. They're shooting a free throw. They miss it. I jump up and get the rebound. One of their guys knocks me on the floor. I throw the ball to Matt. It bounces between one of their players' legs to Matt Santangelo. He dribbles the length of the court, nails a 3 at the buzzer. And we run out of that place like it was on fire. It was a crazy experience. I loved it.
Awesome. What was the team you took great pride in beating?
Oh man, UW and WSU. I mean, any Pac-10 school in particular, but I mean, we lost my freshman year to WSU, and I turned my Gonzaga gear inside out and threatened to transfer. I was so mad. I'm still mad about that. I wanted to punish WSU and UW, and I did. That was fun.
Awesome. Most impressive opponent. So by this, I mean a guy who you kind of looked at, and you're a competitor, and you mentioned you never went into a game saying, oh man, we're in trouble here. Was there a guy you looked at respectfully just said, all right, man, this guy, this dude's good?
All right. So yeah. So there was a time where I wasn't like, oh man, what are we doing here? But I was my first year professional. I was playing in Japan, and we took a tour into China, and we were playing the Shanghai Sharks, and they had a 22-year-old soon to be NBA sensation named Yao Ming as their center. And that was my matchup because I was our center.
Oh, screw that.
Yeah, we're getting ready to like go, and we're warming up, and we're jumping ball. Like, this dude is almost a foot taller than me, so I knew it was going to be an interesting matchup. But that was like a guy that I was looking at, like, okay, like how am I going to get this guy off the glass? Like, really? So that was an interesting one.
Now, you're a good rebounder. Were you able to get him off the glass?
I did not. I didn't keep him off the glass the whole game. I did win the jump ball somehow because I wanted to make a point of it. And then I gave him 34, but he gave me 38. So I didn't keep him off the glass very well.
Who was the most overhyped guy or maybe even team you played against?
Everybody in a Pac-10 uniform.
Love the Pac-10. You got that mid-major grit that we love to see, where you just love beating the more well-resourced guys who get shoes all the time.
Yeah, right. That's it. You're jealous of those guys. You're mad at it. That's just the way it is. That's what a chip is, right?
Yeah, I hear you, brother. You think about maybe your career at Gonzaga. Who's a guy you're kind of or maybe even just as you're coming up through the high school ranks even too, but just maybe a guy who was really good and you're maybe surprised that he didn't carve out a more successful professional career? Like a guy that you would have bet on, man, that guy's going to be good, but it never quite panned out for him for whatever reason.
I was an Eric Montross fan just because I felt like he was really tough, growing up. He was a couple years older. So watching him play, I really wanted to see like some of those big hard-nosed guys do well. And then, there was just a lot of stretch fours and a lot of real talented guys, it's like Scalabrini and, a lot of guys who sort of their game sort of fit into the NBA, but it didn't really. There was like the Shaquille O'Neal. We need the centers are going to be 7'2". The four men are going to be 7 foot. The threes are going to be like 6'9". The NBA was just huge there for a while. And there was a whole like genre of really skilled guys that could really win a lot of basketball games that nobody was interested in. And so, that kind of that generation, those are the guys I would like to have seen get more of a chance, myself included, those guys.
Yeah, you think, first of all, you just complimented a Pac-10 guy in Scalabrini, but Scalabrini probably did.
Guy, we go way back.
Scal probably did come about maybe 10, 15 years too early, and he'd fit well in today's NBA game. Right. One Gonzaga teammate described you as a mellow dude off the court. I think you've proven that here today, but a guy who would run through his own mother to get a rebound. We saw that in the Florida game. So how accurate is that assessment? It's
accurate. My mother was playing basketball with me in 8th grade because I accidentally chucked her in the chin. That's just a competition thing for me. And that's one of the reasons, like, I don't bet like when I play golf with my buddies or anything like that, because competition, it's time to win. And it does unleash a little something in me that's a little nasty. And I don't like to always show that side of it. And as far as off the court, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, that's for sure. I'm the most laid back guy that you can find.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think you're a father too. Do you let your kids win at games, even if it's like checkers?
Yes, because my kids are my clones. And if they lose, they freak out. And it's not worth the hassle to beat them at anything. So
awesome, man. So Coach Izzo at Michigan State, when we had Jason Andreas on here, former Michigan State player, I said, hey, tell me something that most people don't know about maybe Coach Izzo, or they'd be surprised to know. So, hey, Coach Izzo actually plays the accordion, which doesn't quite fit. Not the coolest of instruments. So what's something people would be surprised to know about Coach Few?
Surprised to know about Coach Few. I guess just maybe the story's been told, but he's just a super well-rounded guy. I mean, if you know Norm Few, if you know his dad, being a minister and being so calm, I mean, that's really like Fewey's magic sauce, like in my opinion. He's never yelled at me, and there's been times, that I probably deserved it, for who knows what I was doing. But Fewey stays calm in the moment, and I think his secret weapon is just having Norm saying like, Mark, what are you so mad about? Calm down, just having that upbringing. I think Norm's his secret weapon. So he doesn't really have any hidden quirks or weird things that he likes to do. He's a killer fly fisherman. That's really well known. He will hit all the rivers around here, and he's just a killer angler. The fishes that he catches, with his physical stature being what it is, and he needs help lifting them out of the water. They're so big, but he's a great angler.
Gotcha. And we're going to wrap it up right here at 99. We recently released Gonzaga's 1999 shorts, as well as the Zags 2001 joints. You mentioned uniforms changed while you were there. Which did you prefer?
Man, so the 99 shorts, when they came, they had the big bulldog on the side. They had a big graphic. They were just night and day different from like anything we had before. I still have those shorts. They're in my closet, actually. Those are amazing. So that's by far my favorite uniform or like Gonzaga thing that we've ever done was the 99 big bulldog shorts that we put out there. I mean, you said it, like we did not have new uniforms. Our white uniforms were not new for that year. They were like old. They'd already been used. And so the bulldog ones that came out, they were brand new to us. And that's something special, when you're broke college kids and your program is kind of broke and you get, nice shiny new uniforms, you never forget something like that. And those 99 shorts, that's what those are to me.
Awesome, man. Well, let's end it there, Casey, man, and let you get on with your day.
Thank you for listening to the 99 podcast with HVS, the high volume shooters. For more information, check out the blog at 199.com under HVS. And while you're there, do yourself a favor and pick up some retro college shorts. Till next time.